Matthew had been presumed dead by his family for 15 years. The victim of a carefully orchestrated lie. His brother Victor and wife Lauren had managed to erase him from their lives, spreading rumors and faking his downfall to hide their affair. But when Matthew unexpectedly returns, the weight of the past crashes into the present. He learns of their deception and begins to uncover the dark truths about what happened to him. The once loving and stable family he knew has transformed into a web of lies, with Victor holding all the power, manipulating everyone to protect his image. Matthew feels the sting of betrayal and the loss of his family, especially his daughter, Amelia, who had been forced to believe he was dead. The story takes a dramatic turn when Matthew confronts Victor, forcing him to face the lies he's told. But the real question is, can Matthew find the strength to expose the truth without destroying everything? As he unravels the truth, Matthew's struggle between justice and revenge becomes his greatest challenge. His return isn't just about reclaiming his life, but also about facing the haunting emotional scars left by his family's betrayal. Matthew's life had been shattered by the lies of his own family. For 15 years, his brother Victor and his wife Lauren had carefully erased him from their lives, leaving him to struggle in isolation with the weight of their betrayal. The realization that he was not only abandoned but intentionally silenced, his name tarnished, his very existence erased, burned in his chest like a deep wound that would never heal. The truth began to surface when Matthew unexpectedly returned, standing before his daughter Amelia, now grown, who had believed him dead. Her pain, her disbelief, mirrored his own as she processed the truth of what had been done to her. The love he once held for his family twisted into confusion and heartbreak. He saw how his absence had impacted Amelia, how she had grown up in the shadow of a lie, and it tore him apart. Yet, with this painful reunion came a surge of hope. He was no longer a ghost. He could finally expose the truth. But it wasn't just about vengeance, it was about confronting the betrayal, the years of stolen time, and the promise to rebuild a bond with his daughter that he thought he'd lost forever. As the silence settled over the backyard, a tension that felt almost suffocating wrapped around the group, each person frozen in disbelief. The truth that Matthew had been hiding for 15 years spilled into the open. And with it, the weight of years of betrayal. His daughter, Amelia, stood before him, her mind racing as the truth about her father's disappearance unraveled in front of everyone. The revelation that her grandfather, Victor, had orchestrated the erasure of Matthew from their lives shattered the foundation of everything Amelia had believed. She had always trusted the people closest to her, never questioning the version of events they had given her. But now, faced with the undeniable truth, she found herself questioning everything, even the life she had built. She couldn't deny the anger that surged through her as she realized how her own father had been erased from existence. But amid the anger, a deep sadness took root. Her heart ached as she grasped the magnitude of what had been stolen from her. The moments with her father she would never get back. The weight of the revelation was crushing. But Amelia knew she had no choice but to confront it head-on. This was the beginning of a new chapter. One that would demand courage, truth, and healing. Amelia's decision to confront Victor, her grandfather, was an act of pure defiance against the years of deception that had clouded her life. The weight of everything she had learned in a single, devastating moment pressed down on her with unbearable intensity. As she entered the family estate, the place that had once been her home, memories of childhood innocence seemed to haunt her with each step. The grand house stood imposing, almost mocking her as she prepared to face the man who had stolen so much from her. Victor, sitting in his chair with the same confident, calculating gaze, greeted her with a smirk that sent a chill through her veins. His easy arrogance only made her more determined to unearth the truth, to make him answer for the manipulation, the lies, and the broken promises. "You ruined my life," she said, her voice steady despite the storm of emotions swirling inside her. The confrontation was raw, brutal. Victor's attempt to dismiss her anger as if it were nothing more than a child's tantrum fueled the fire in her heart. She knew now this wasn't just about reclaiming her father. It was about taking back her future. And she wasn't about to let the man who had orchestrated her pain walk away without facing the consequences. The tension in the room was palpable as the truth finally began to unravel. Ethan, standing off to the side, could barely comprehend the depth of the revelation unfolding before him. He had spent his entire life idolizing Victor, believing in the man who had shaped his world. But now, his whole understanding of family, loyalty, and trust was shattering before his eyes. Amelia, her voice steady despite the weight of years of pain, turned to him, the question in her gaze clear. "How could you stand by him, knowing what he did?" she asked, her words slicing through the heavy air. Ethan felt a lump form in his throat. He had never questioned Victor before, never seen the cracks in the perfect image of his family. But now, in the wake of Amelia's words, everything felt false. The silence between them grew unbearable. He wanted to defend his father, to excuse his actions, but the truth was undeniable. Amelia's pain was a mirror, showing him the betrayal that had been lurking beneath the surface all these years. He had to choose his loyalty to a man who had lied to him or the woman who had suffered because of those lies. The decision tore at him, but in that moment, he knew which path he would take. The night of reckoning had arrived, and the atmosphere was thick with tension as the confrontation loomed. Matthew stood at the edge of the family estate, his heart racing as he mentally prepared for the storm that was about to unfold. Amelia, resolute and unflinching, led the charge into the home where everything had once seemed perfect. But now, it felt like a house of lies. She had made her decision. She would no longer be a victim of the manipulation that had stolen so many years from her. As they entered the grand living room, Victor was waiting, as cold and calculated as ever, with a smirk that twisted Matthew's stomach. He'd always known his brother had a dark side, but never had he seen it so clearly until now. The truth, long buried, was about to explode in front of everyone who had once trusted Victor without question. Matthew's pulse thundered in his ears, but he stood firm beside Amelia. This wasn't just about the betrayal of the past, it was about taking back control over their futures. When Victor arrogantly dismissed the weight of his crimes, Amelia's voice rang out, sharp and clear, and Matthew felt the shudder of satisfaction that came with finally confronting the man who had upended their lives. The confrontation with Victor had left Amelia and Matthew shaken, but the hardest part was still ahead, deciding how to move forward in the wake of such betrayal. The fallout from the meeting echoed in their minds as they left the estate. The weight of their shared past now fully exposed. For the first time in years, Matthew felt a strange sense of clarity, though it was tinged with the sharp edges of unresolved grief. Amelia, once so bound by the lies, now stood as his anchor. But even her strength couldn't completely mask the tremor in her voice when she spoke of the future. The betrayal from her father, the man who had shaped so much of her life, had shattered the foundation she thought was unbreakable. She needed time to process, to rebuild, and for the first time, Matthew understood that he, too, had to rebuild his own life. Piece by piece, the shadows of their past would always linger, but they no longer had the power to dictate their every move. The journey toward healing had begun, but it wasn't going to be easy. Together, they would face the aftermath of their shattered trust, knowing that only through honesty, courage, and patience would they find their way back to the light. In the weeks that followed, as the dust settled from the truth being exposed, the weight of the past began to lift from Matthew and Amelia's shoulders. Though it never fully left them, the quiet moments, those rare, peaceful instances where they could simply be together without the looming specter of betrayal, became more precious. But healing wasn't a linear path. There were times when the old wounds would resurface, a passing thought or an unexpected memory bringing back the hurt. Yet, each time it happened, they found themselves growing stronger together. Amelia, with her quiet determination, started rebuilding her trust, not just in her father, but in the world around her. And Matthew, though scarred, began to see a future he hadn't dared to imagine in years. They learned to lean on each other, each step forward carrying them farther from the life they once knew. It wasn't perfect, nothing ever would be after everything they had been through, but it was real. Their connection, forged in the fires of betrayal and rebirth, grew deeper as they rebuilt the fragments of their lives. They didn't know what the future would hold, but for the first time, they felt ready to face it together. As the weeks passed, the ripples of the truth continued to affect every corner of Matthew's life. He had always believed that the world worked in clear, predictable ways: loyalty, family, success, but everything he had once held as absolute was now in question. The truth about Victor's manipulation had shattered his entire understanding of family and trust, leaving him lost in a sea of uncertainty. Yet, amid the chaos, Matthew found clarity in one unexpected place: the relationships he had built with those who still stood by him. His bond with Amelia, now stronger than ever, became a guiding force. She, too, had been betrayed, but she had taken the courageous step to reclaim her life and, in doing so, had become a beacon for him. As their connection deepened, Matthew began to realize that healing wasn't just about confronting the past, but embracing the future with open arms. He understood now that while his family's actions had stolen years from him, They couldn't take away his power to rebuild. The question wasn't about revenge or settling old scores, it was about redefining who he was. Finding his purpose again, and forging a new path forward with those who truly mattered. As Matthew and Amelia walked away from the wreckage of their past, they began to piece together the lives they had almost lost. The weight of betrayal, which had seemed insurmountable just weeks before, now felt like something they could survive together. Matthew no longer defined himself by the man he had been. His identity was no longer bound by the expectations and lies of his family. He had discovered something more powerful, the ability to choose a new path. With Amelia's unwavering support, he dared to dream again. They spent their days building a life free from the shadows of Victor's control, redefining what it meant to love and trust. For the first time in years, Matthew felt a sense of freedom that wasn't just physical, it was emotional, spiritual. Amelia, too, had found the courage to step away from the family who had once been everything to her, reclaiming her own sense of self. Their bond, now rooted in shared pain and the desire for something better, became the foundation of a life they would build together, one step at a time. And in this journey, Matthew realized that the greatest power wasn't in revenge or in retaliation, it was in choosing to move forward together, without fear. In today's world, it's easy to feel trapped by past decisions, family expectations, or betrayal, much like Matthew and Amelia. However, their story teaches us that the greatest power lies in choosing our own path forward, no matter how difficult it may seem. Sometimes, letting go of toxic relationships or painful histories is necessary for growth. It's okay to step away from situations that hold you back, to heal, and to rebuild. Embrace the courage to confront the truth, seek your own freedom, and surround yourself with those who truly support your well-being. Your future is in your hands.